and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. If you have not seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. I'm an attorney. I do nothing but elder law. I work at Myrick O'Connell. There are 70 of us there because we're outside of Boston, and so as a result, everybody gets to do what they like doing. I do nothing but elder law. Our offices are right here. We have 20 lawyers in Westborough. But this show is not about elder law. It's about my friends Frank and Mary and their kids, Peter, Paul, and Mary Jr. If you've been to a presentation of mine or seen one on this station, you know that Frank and Mary's goal is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. So the question is, if you want to do that, who are the people that you need to know, and what are the programs that you need to know about to stay here right in Southborough? Because if you are in Southborough, you don't want to die and be buried in the backyard like with your kids in Seattle or in San Diego or in New York or even like in Marlborough, where I live. You want to be here. So the question is, who do you need to know? And Doug Peck, my co-host, who lives here in Southborough and has for like ages, right? For ages. And who runs an organization called Seniors Helping Seniors, which actually does outreach, hires nothing but seniors, to work with nothing but seniors, to try to help them in a lot of roles, tends to know all these people. So he brought a wonderful person to talk to us today. Doug?
I did. I brought a neighbor. She doesn't live in Southborough.
You brought your neighbor?
A neighbor. She lives in a neighboring town of Ashland.
Yep.
And her name is Newberry, and she has a company called Smooth Transitions of Massachusetts. And she's what is now called a move manager, and is expert at not just helping people move, but helping people get ready to move and start decluttering. And I thought this was a perfect time of year to start thinking about that as we go into the new year. Think about, how am I going to get rid of some of this stuff? Why should I get rid of it?
Right.
And kids coming home for the holidays say, Mom, what are we going to do with all this stuff?
And maybe you can
have?
unload it on them. If they're coming
Maybe
home
you
for
can
the
unload it on
holidays,
them.
say, what are you going to take with you,
Right.
when you leave?
And
That's a great New Year's resolution. That sounds like a great New Year's resolution.
I think it is. So I think it's a good time of year. So Ann's going to let us know not only what Move Manager does, but also some tips about how to get organized, how to get started with this, because everybody looks at it. I look at my house and saying, I don't know where to start. It's a huge project.
A huge undertaking. But I just want to ask her to start. So you didn't go to high school and decide you wanted to be a move manager. So how did you end up doing this?
I pretty much fell into being a move manager. I'm a trained engineer, and I actually have a minor in anthropology and archaeology. So I joke with my clients.
So it all connects, right?
Yeah, I joke with my clients and I tell them that every closet, basement, attic is like an archaeological dig. So it's a lot of fun. The other thing is that I had a plastic recycling business for many years, and so I'm all about finding new homes for things and not dumping everything in the landfill and into the trash. So my clients tend to often say to me, I don't really need this anymore, but it's too nice to throw away.
Right.
And
one of my daughters will want it.
Yeah.
Or somebody will really want this.
So I like to be able to give them different options of what they can do with the things. And so it all kind of came together, and when I decided it was time for something new, I looked at what my skill set was and what I wanted to do and where I was headed, and started to be a move manager. And the first client I had, I felt this is what I was meant to do. This is what I had been working all my life towards. And I see every client I have how all my skill sets and my experience to date comes together to help them as best as I can help them.
Yeah. That's what I liked about Ann. I've known her for a number of years now. It's sort of work is her passion. And you can't go wrong with somebody who
really likes
working. Really likes it.
Right.
But the other thing for me too is the recycling aspect, where if you're not going to throw it away, if it's still as important to you, it's going to go to a better home.
Right.
It may go to Savers, it may go to another, Goodwill or Salvation Army. I don't know where you take all your different things to. You have a whole outlet to do it. But I think people should feel good that they're their artifacts are going to someplace that's going to help
someplace
somebody
useful.
else.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. And just while that penchant of people to save things because they kind of wanted it to be useful,
Right.
it really reflects what is now a societal goal, which wasn't the case 30 or 40 years ago,
Right.
where you could literally say, "Oh, come on, just throw it in the dump." But that's not the good solution to anything
Right.
anymore. So
Right.
it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Well, the other thing too is I was having a conversation just last night with some people, and they were saying, "But our kids don't want anything."
Mm-hmm.
And I said to them, it's not just their kids. It's the younger generations are now into, they want to experience life. They don't want to have this train of belongings trailing them through life. And so because of that, they like the things that come in a box and you assemble it and it's only going to last for, 10 or 15 years and then it's going to fall apart. Well, that's about the time that they're going to want to move again
Yeah.
or change their style. And so that works for them. Unfortunately, now you have people who have beautiful oak furniture, cedar furniture, mahogany furniture, and you might have heard the term brown goods.
Yeah.
People
Brown
are
goods.
referring to wood furniture as just brown goods because you have the combination of these younger generations that don't want sturdy furniture that will last forever, and then you have people who worked very hard all their lives to get this nice, beautiful furniture, but now the people in their 80s, 70s, even 60s, the leading edge of baby boomers are in their late 70s now.
Mm-hmm.
They are moving to smaller places and don't need all the big furniture. And so now there's an abundance of this furniture out there and there's a lack of people who want it. So the wonderful furniture now is just being lumped into a term.
Yeah, because it
Brown
doesn't have
goods.
any value, really,
Yeah.
except sentimental type value.
And you were talking about people who want to stay in Southborough forever and always, and you don't have to move to downsize.
Okay.
You find that as you get older,
That's a good point.
you might need a cane, or you might need a walker, or you might need a wheelchair. Well, those don't go between the coffee table and the sofa as easily anymore.
Right.
Or you might find that now you like the chairs with arms on them so you can get up and down easier. And so all the chairs that don't have arms that you have around the house, you're not using, no one else is using. So why not give yourself the space to move around and not have that? And it's also a good time to go through the drawers, the closets, the cabinets, and review what you've used every day and what you haven't touched for in years, and part with those things, recognizing that when the kids are in, have them take home whatever it is they want, have them enjoy it now and they can tell you how they're enjoying it, and then if they say no, give yourself permission, and that's the hardest part, to give yourself permission to then do with it what you want to do with it. And if that means giving it to the next door neighbor or donating it or sending it to transitional housing for people who are coming out of being homeless, you have to give yourself that permission, and once you give yourself that permission, then I help people with the directions to go with everything.
So there is good places to find homes for these somewhat unwanted objects right now. Some people do want them because they need them, like transitional housing or other facilities like that. Is there sort of, as a person starts thinking about this, is there sort of a room that you recommend they start with, or is it really up to them to say, you got to do, here's a good way to just get going? Because
Just to get going.
I look in my cabinet some days and I'm saying, we got 3 sets of dishes here.
What is the point of this
What's the point
exactly?
of 3 sets
Yeah.
of dishes that here, in this one cabinet? I don't know. So I got to convince my wife I got to get rid of one of them. But do you start like that, or how do you go about it?
Well, what I tell people, I give talks wherever anyone would like me to give a talk about downsizing and decluttering. And what I tell people is, first off, it really doesn't matter where you start. What's important is that you start. I tell people, though, that if you want to start in a certain spot and then keep moving forward from there. Pick the room that you spend the least time in.
Okay.
The reason
Well,
for
that's
that.
a good point too, because there are a
Yeah.
lot of houses. Well, like I bet we both have
Right.
those.
Rooms
How many
that-
times have you gone
empty
into that
bedrooms,
room?
right.
because they're empty bedrooms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason for that too is because as you go through the process, it always looks worse before it looks better.
Yeah.
And as you're pulling things out and making the decision and decluttering that room, you're giving yourself a space that when you get to the busier rooms, the rooms you're spending all the time in, you can put things into the room you've already done, because you don't really want to be in the space that's totally tornadoed while
Right.
you're going through
Right,
something.
that's a good idea.
That's such
Yeah.
an engineer talk. That's
It
great.
is.
What
That's
a wonderful thing. Because you wouldn't necessarily think about that.
Right.
Well, the other
Right.
thing I tell people is start with just like an hour and a half, 2 hours. You don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to declutter my kitchen.
Right.
Today.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then have company over for lunch.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Plan an hour and a half to 2 hours. I tell people, and this usually gets people laughing, but I tell people, fill your water bottle, go to the bathroom, have your snack, and then set your timer and go into the area you're going to work, and do not leave that room for any circumstances until that timer goes off.
Oh.
So if you're, let's say, going through a desk,
Mhm.
and you pull the desk drawer out and you find a bunch of papers that really should be in the dining room instead of in the bedroom you're in. You put the papers by the door.
Uh-huh.
You do not get up
And
and say, I'm going to go put this in the dining room and then I'll come back. Because the minute you leave that room, the likelihood that you're going to get back to that room during
Yeah.
your hour and a half to 2
Very
hours
true.
is
Yeah.
almost non-existent.
Yeah.
So put it by the door and then keep making decisions. I also tell people, start with the big pieces of furniture first. You know, it's okay to say, I want to keep this desk.
Mhm.
That's okay. Or to say, I don't want to keep this desk. But once you've made the decision, you need to record it some way. Some people use Post-it notes. Some people use a list. Some people use those removable stickers.
Uh-huh.
Anything that works for you. All I ask is, and suggest, is that you record what your method is, so that next week when you come back to do it again, you don't say, what did blue mean? So
Yeah.
that you can keep making progress. But if you start with the big pieces of furniture first and then work your way into the drawers and the closets and the cabinets, then at the end of an hour and a half, you'll feel like you've gotten a lot done, and you'll feel more inclined to come back and do more the next time. The other thing I tell people is you don't want to be doing this every single day, because it wears on you.
Yes.
It's very emotional. And so just like when you work out and they say after you've exercised, you need to give your body time to recover before you do it again. You have to give your mind and emotions time to recover. So if you want to really push the issue, every other day. But if you start early, you can be doing this, once a week, once a month. You can just set a timed schedule, and sooner than later, you'll be done.
Yeah. You're right, though. I mean, even the simplest objects sometimes have a lot of emotion to them. And you don't really realize that till you have to decide, do I really want to throw this away? Do I want to never see this, whatever it is, again? So
Yeah.
but it makes it difficult. I think it makes it difficult for couples because people have different, I know my wife and I have different values of what I find valuable and she finds valuable. I'm ready to throw a lot of her stuff out.
And you might want to have a different set of
we might
dishes
go-
that you each want to.
yeah.
But maybe you agree that the third one, that's the one that's
Maybe
really
we go
got.
into the room a different days.
That was gotta go.
I don't know, but it's not that it's confrontational. It's just that it's different.
Yeah.
But it's so
You know?
funny as she describes this, because you realize that the reason why this happens is that during your lifetime, there is never a time something built into like your normal year or your normal month that says, because you've been acquiring things,
Right.
that this is the time to get rid of some stuff,
Right.
and so it literally will never happen for 30, 40 years. There was never a time when you said, I have to get rid of something, and all of a sudden, you talk about the time involved. This is a very time-intensive task. It's a million little things
Yes.
Yeah.
that have to be done. And so that idea of really taking little bites out of it, right? Of a task that you're not, and no one's crazy about, like, oh, I've just been dying to do this for 20 years to get rid of
Right.
this stuff, you know? It's a great strategy. That's a
Well, I
great
like to equate it to the story I heard years ago about, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
And, you look at your house, a room, even a closet, and it's this big giant elephant. But if you eat it one bite at a time,
Yeah.
sooner rather than later, like I said before, you'll find that, the elephant is gone. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is just because you have space doesn't mean you have to fill it.
Right.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with an empty drawer. There's nothing wrong with shelves that have nothing in it in your kitchen. There's nothing wrong with a bookshelf that has space on either side of the books or either side of the knickknacks.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind as well. And as a move manager, I'm helping people all the time with going through the thought process of how to do this, and sometimes just having someone else walk you through eases the ability to make the decisions. And I've had people say to me, husbands and wives or children of clients, say to me, wow, we've been trying for years to get those decisions made.
Yeah.
And it's really, sometimes because they're a family member, you don't want to acquiesce because you don't want to give them the satisfaction. And having a third person come in is helpful. And when I work with spouses, a lot of times I will work with them separately in order to get a feel for what's important to them. And then once I find out what's important, when there's issues like, 3 sets of china where one wants one set and one wants the other set, first we agree the third set can go. And then we have a conversation as to how often you use the other 2 sets, when and why, and maybe you just keep half of one set and half of the other set so you each compromise.
Right.
Or maybe, well, you don't really care as much. You were just saying this set because it was from your mother or something like that.
Right.
So you have to find the background stories and work through the process. But most people do underestimate how much time this takes.
Yeah.
And as you were describing it, I was also realizing that I guess we both face this, that the wonderfulness of this is that if you ever really do need to downsize the entirety of your space, what you've got left is more minimalized, so it's a lot easier to deal with that.
Well, and
Once
if you are
pieces of furniture
moving,
were gone, yeah.
if you are moving to a smaller place, maybe you're staying in Southborough but moving to over 55 housing or a community or some other option, the other thing that is helpful with having a move manager involved is that when it comes to packing everything up, I help people pack, but I pack with the destination in mind. So if you're moving from a 4-bedroom house to a 2-bedroom house, where you have a kitchen but no longer have a dining room, perhaps, I'm not going to mark boxes dining room because you're not going to have one.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a big difference between what a moving company does and what a move manager does. The moving company comes in, they are phenomenal at packing quickly. But if you imagine a swarm of locusts and a big bushy tree full of leaves, and like that, you have sticks.
Gone.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what the movers will do.
Yeah.
But they will mark that tree.
Yeah.
And you won't know really what's in the individual boxes. The other thing is I unpack at the other end.
Oh.
And when a moving company says that they're going to unpack, they will put it on the first flat surface,
Yeah.
where I will put things in closets, in cabinets, in drawers, and I make the bed. I get the place ready so that people can sleep in it that night.
That's a
and-
huge help
and
for
can go from
seniors,
there.
because again, that's just a lot of work and a lot of energy that a lot of folks don't have, to spare, or if they're using a cane or a walker or something,
Yeah.
they just can't manage all of that.
So when people are making that kind of move, seniors are actually, or or there's a move coming, let me put it that way. Who usually calls you? Do you most often get calls by seniors or by the kids?
It's a little of each. Sometimes I'll have it depends on who has heard of a move manager. That's really the big issue. A lot of people I run into ask me what I do, and I tell them, and they say, oh my goodness, if I had only known that. I just went through it with my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, my cousin. And so getting the word out that there's help available and that there is an industry out there that can help people with the process of moving. And because I'm knowledgeable about who to use as a mover, how to pack, what to do with all the different things that you're not taking with. I also will do floor plans, which are important because sometimes that
Floor plans?
104-inch sofa you have isn't going to fit on the 96-inch wall in the new place. And you don't want to find that out when the movers are standing there going, you can't get in and out of the door now.
Yeah.
So you want to plan that ahead of time. So I will.
So you actually do like a actual little like a floor plan of the new place and kind of.
Yeah, I'll
try to
measure the
fix it up.
furniture, and I will
see.
measure the new place, and I will do an actual floor plan where the clients can work with me and say, here's the furniture that's most important to me. I mean, if you want your conference table in the middle of your living room, I figure out how to do it. But we have a conversation where I point out that, the sofa isn't going to be able to fit in addition to the conference table. So here's the compromises involved. But you do all this ahead of time because the last thing you want to do is have the movers who are perfectly happy to stand there and move furniture place to place to place, but they're also on the clock when they're doing that.
Yeah.
And it's not the time to suddenly find out your treasured belongings won't fit.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, like you and I are like a lot of other people, is that we haven't moved in 30 or some odd years.
Right.
So we don't, we can't imagine this level of detail. We just think the movers come in, get the furniture, put it in a truck and go,
Yeah.
And so
Right,
when
and
you
the
really
note-
start thinking about it,
It's true. And the notion of actually having somebody supervise a mover, that's just always
Right.
been considered to be, that's just what they do. They just
Right.
move, and and then they
Right.
move, and they and everything shows up at the other end. But the notion of actually trying to govern that process somehow. And I guess the other thing, as she's describing this, so as you know, because we've been together for a lot, I get no sense of this of space.
Yeah.
I remember once I was in college, right, and I was a psychology major, and so and I was in the psych department. So one of the graduate students said, Can I give you an IQ test because they have to for their testing and stuff? I said sure, because I'm a smart guy. This will be a lot of fun, right? So I do the IQ test, and about a week later, I asked him. I said, so how did I do?
Yeah.
He said the verbal terrific, the math terrific, the spatial marginally retarded. He said it was that kind of the scale is like 100 is in the middle. You were about at an 80. Right, just below, because you just don't have that, and to have somebody that does that for you. I mean, to the notion of actually drawing it. So as you say that, I'm sure a lot of people listening saying that would be so cool. You actually see your stuff in the little space, so you get to see how you manipulate it and
before you have to move in.
Yeah,
At least that takes a lot of the anxiety out of moving, knowing that hey, it's going to fit and this is what we need.
Well, and I've had clients also who have said, oh, I want to take it all.
Yeah.
And sometimes people who don't have the good spatial awareness, what I have done too is I'll say, okay, here's all your furniture, and I'll hand it to them, and I'll say, and here's the square,
And here's the space.
and feel free to show me how you would like it.
Yeah.
And I had one particular client that she just looked at the two hands and she said, and I had been trying for every which way to explain to her that it wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she looked at both hands and she said, this is not going to fit in here. And it was like, finally, I figured out how to communicate.
Yeah.
And it's all about communication.
Yeah.
It's figuring out what works best for each person in order to ease them through this process.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy, it's emotional, it's
Yeah.
difficult. And there's things to keep in mind. Changing vision means you don't want to take your glass coffee table with you.
Right.
You know, changing physicality means you may not want a coffee table at all. I have lots of people say things to me like, you know, I never sit in that sofa.
Yeah.
And I say, well, why are you taking it?
Yeah.
And it just, they've always had a sofa in their living
Yeah.
space. And so little things like that,
Yeah.
it's all about having the conversation and walking through to what makes logical sense. And that's where my engineering comes in, because it's a process and it's a framework, and my spatial awareness for the floor plans. And so, you know, it's a give and take, and you know, I love working with people because I learn about their history and what's important to them, and then we make sure that's reflected in whatever living space we're designing for them.
And as once again, just as another practical thing, if you're not doing this, if you're like everybody who moves,
Right.
you're not doing it a lot.
Right.
You have no idea who the moving companies are.
Right.
You're pulling them out of the hat, or somebody's personal recommendation. Either, oh, those guys really screwed me, or oh, I loved them.
Yeah.
But the notion of actually having a set of players and
Right.
even knowing who's good at what, that's really handy. And incentive pricing, because you wouldn't really know what pricing was.
Right.
You know,
Right.
unless you're really, really shopping. So to be able to bring that to the table.
Well, and even if you are getting multiple quotes from movers, what you'll find is you're comparing different fruits, because they lay out the plan of action so differently that you still have difficulty comparing them. I've worked with them enough that I can translate the estimates
Yeah.
so that the clients can know one from the other.
Can you give
And-
an example of that? Of how people kind of, how the different ways of estimating it would just come out differently?
Some people will give you a price, but they'll say, we're going to have 3 guys for 3 hours. Someone else will say, okay, it's going to be 2 guys for 10 hours. You know, someone else will say, well, when we pack, we give a box price that includes the labor and the materials. And someone else says, no, we charge for the materials and everything else is done by the hour.
Yeah.
And if if somebody is saying we're sending 2 guys for 10 hours, and that's not enough time, then there's something in the contract that says, in those additional hours, you're paying X?
Well, they're all estimates. You know,
Yeah.
no one knows
'Cause they're all
exactly
estimates.
how much
Right,
it's going to
right.
take.
I see.
The final is always based on actual time. But, you know, there are some times when 3 guys make more sense than 2 guys. If you're going up and down an elevator, you want someone who is making sure that elevator is there when the guys are ready to load it.
Right.
And if it takes 2 guys to go up and down the elevator and you don't have that, you know, it could take longer. Sometimes there's steps, you know,
Yeah.
and you need people in teams to carry things. So there's different ways of looking at it. Sometimes you just want the job done as quickly as possible because you don't want to be 9, 10 o'clock at night finally flopping into bed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's on the moving end. And the other thing too is when clients are moving, I usually suggest that they go spend the day with their family or with friends and do something else, and then come later in the day, and I'll be there to oversee the whole process and make sure everything is taking place, but they don't have to go through the stress of seeing
That's
Right.
huge.
their 25, 30-year-old home suddenly be empty.
Right.
And seeing all their stuff being loaded on the
Yeah.
truck,
Yeah.
and then, you know, watching it in the new space, which is smaller, and you've got all the movers, and you've got me, and you've got the unpacking going on,
Right.
it gets more crowded.
Right.
So they'll come in at the end, and I try my best to make it look like I beamed up on Star Trek from the one place to the
To the
next
next,
place.
yeah.
And that's why with our new logo, we say same heart, new home.
Yeah.
We try to get the essence of your home into the new space. And
Yeah.
again, whether you're staying put
Yeah.
or not staying put, you know, sometimes people are just moving to the first floor because they can't
That's
go up
true.
and down the steps anymore. You know, we
True.
still have to rearrange space
Yeah.
and reduce the overall quantity of items in the home.
But I suppose that's really kind of
Yeah.
one of the real messages here. When you had first suggested that we have this guest, it was like, is this some people do whole houses, but the notion of actually using this as a vehicle for changing the configuration of your own house, or of using less of the house, if you want to keep the house, or we're just
Right.
kind of use, you wouldn't necessarily think of that,
Right.
right?
Right.
Well, and I've also
Nor
had,
could you figure it out as a kind of a normal
Absolute-
person
right.
how to do that,
Yeah.
right?
well, I've also had situations too where, you know, the kids will suggest that there's some remodeling done in the house. And, you know, the parents say, oh, that makes sense, or you get a bigger bathroom so
Right.
you can, you know, fit a wheelchair in or something like that. Well, sometimes you need to pack up all your treasures while the remodelers are working on it.
Yeah.
And I've also done that. I've gone in and just packed people's delicates into boxes because the remodelers don't pack.
Yeah.
Right.
And then at
Yeah.
the end, you know, because I've taken pictures and documented it, I can put it back so it looks like it was there in the first place.
That
There we
is
go.
cool too. This is really good. I
Yeah.
think this has just been, it's literally eye-opening, you
Yeah,
know, in terms
I
of a
think it
whole
is.
set of things. So can you get us just your contact information and stuff? Because we'll have the folks at Cable just kind of have all that information up there,
Yep.
right? For people that want to give you a call. Because you're not too far away from town,
No.
right?
No, I'm based in Ashland.
So yeah, so that's really close.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Ann.
This is
Thank you.
great. This is
Maybe
really
people get
great.
some motivation here for the first of the
Yes,
year.
that's right. For the beginning
Get
of the year.
started.
That's
It's
right.
one
They're
drawer.
not going
Yeah.
to start. They're not going to
Again,
start at Christmas, but
Yeah.
you know, first of the year. That's
Right.
Well, the other thing I tell people is,
Yeah.
you know, for every new thing that comes in, pick two things.
Oh, that's tough.
Two
Thank
things
you
to
so
go.
much.
Thanks.
You're
Doug,
welcome.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been a wonderful year. We'll look
Happy
forward
holidays,
to happy
everybody.
holidays to everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. Thank you.